Chimafidi non kotu era one radio. Samupe jumpe bietia. Chimafidi non kotu era one radio. Oh, ayum pankuma. Chimtu asam pankuma. Chimtu agratum kuma. Era one, yebo numpankua.
They are four women. They are beautiful with brains. They are eloquent, decent, wise, and experienced. You have heard many, the funny. Now, it's time to hear the experience and the brainy. Meet Selena, Dorcas, Gifty, and Annette as they present the real in common getting. In common BISS chain, a dead, as in Takrenu assume the dead, the real in common getting. Showing live this and every Sunday, 7 p.m. on Era One Radio on Facebook and on YouTube, Era One Radio and on Taibo channel. Kai said, so we see the real in common getting ya. What brabon tete? We nyan konkonsa. We the real in common getting.
Hello, good evening, Era Radio listeners and viewers all over the world. It's another Thursday, the 15th day of May 2025. We are almost, we've just divided the days of the month into two. So we are almost getting there. June is going to be here very soon. Anyway, it's another edition of the Divine Connection Show. This is where divinity meets humanity. Of course, I'm in the studio with Pastor Reverend Robert Nisabran. Nisabran is in the studio. Unfortunately, Uncle Max is not able to be here with us tonight. He might join, but then it's a little bit busy somewhere. So we are well able to man the fort. Well, if you want to call in, as usual, it's the same numbers. It's 2402-802-633, or you can text 510-931-094, and I will gladly read your comments. On behalf of your 32, also known as Ostus, we bring you a live broadcast from Facebook, YouTube, and also on TikTok, an educational platform. Here we don't curse, we don't insult, we don't gossip about people unnecessarily. We do educate people, we entertain, and somehow we try to inform. So this is again the show, the Divine Connection Show. We're talking about arguments tonight. I believe Pastor Kron gave us a hint, or he gave us just a tidbit of the iceberg last time we met, not last week, the week before. And so tonight is going to continue with the arguments. I don't know whether we're going to end this chapter today. Of course, there's so much that we have to do. If you look at what he wants to treat tonight, he was telling me with this argument between the king of Egypt, Pharaoh, and the Israeli midwives, if you break it down into atomic propositions or ideas, we have 1,073,741,824 ideas. Can you imagine? So if you were to preach a message from this text, chapter 1, from the 15th to thereabout, you have this many ideas to preach on. I mean, for this topic. Anyway, let me introduce him again. You are welcome, Reverend Robert Akon in the studio. Probably begin.
Thank you. Well, let's talk a little about Ghana. Dr. Boison, not long ago, in fact, about 3 weeks ago, the president of Ghana, John Mahama, launched a suspension effort, which he ultimately succeeded in doing, of the Chief Justice. And so as we speak, the Chief Justice is on suspension, and another Justice of the Supreme Court, Bafuboni, is the acting. Some of us actually opined that even if John Mahama had a reason, the power to pursue that angle, he should consider the destabilization possibilities that this effort could lead to. And apparently, whatever we suggested fell on deaf ears, and he suspended the Chief Justice, mindful of the fact that Dr. Boison, the president is not above the Chief Justice. There are three arms of government: the judiciary, whose head is the Chief Justice; Parliament, whose head is the Speaker; and then the executive, whose head is the president. So Dr. Boison, somebody, because it is the name of the president that is heard most of the time, and he happens to be the face of the country, that does not mean his office takes precedence over any of the other two. And that's why we have to be careful, because the president only executes the laws passed by the legislature,
the parliament.
And then the laws are interpreted by the judiciary.
Court.
So look at it carefully. The president is sworn into office by the Chief Justice. If that ritual is not performed, the president cannot take office. But here, we seem to think that the president had power over the Chief Justice. He appoints and therefore could do what he wants. Now, this is the kicker, Dr. Boison. Mahama breached the constitutional requirements. As we speak, the speaker is not in the country. Mahama is not in the country. I don't know if he is returned today. And the vice president is recuperating outside the country. So Ghana is leaderless.
But of course, I'm sure he must have instituted somebody before traveling.
He didn't, because that has to be a public ritual. So here we are. Mahama has violated the constitution. Now the NPP also said they are going to initiate impeachment proceedings against him. And if truth be told, Mahama could be removed from office. True, because he violated. So what I want to state is, be careful. The Bible said something in Galatians chapter 6, verse 7. It said, be not deceived, for God is not mocked. For whatever a man sows, that also shall he also reap. So Mahama, you've sown something. You've sown something, and you are about to reap it, because if truth be told, we might need a new president without having to go to the polls, because Mahama will be disqualified because he failed to do what the Constitution requires him to do, swear somebody in so that the country will not be without a leader. As we speak, unless Mahama has returned, the country is without a leader, which is unacceptable.
I mean, Pastor Kwame saying, but it would be a bad remiss if he decided to travel without getting a substitute, which I doubt.
But he did. He did.
Maybe we don't have all the facts.
No. I mean, because you cannot hide and do that. That's why the president was sworn in the full view of Ghana and the world. So you couldn't hide and perform that ritual. It is a requirement. It has to be public and it has to be official. He didn't do it.
Yeah, I don't know whether you are.
I'm not. I'm a Ghanaian.
Or
I am a Ghanaian, and I stand for fairness.
Let's just assume that maybe something was done, but it wasn't publicly done.
Or... No. It will be unavailing.
Because it will be very, it
will be unavailing.
Very pathetic and
if he hid
regretful.
If he hid and did that, that will be illegitimate. It will be illegal. It will not stand, because it had to be public. The public had to know who will be the acting president. You couldn't hide and do it.
And where is the speaker to? Also outside?
I traveled outside the country 2 days before, on the 8th. Right? So this is what you get when a person becomes so power drunk and refuses to heed reason. No, I'm using the term. This is what we are up to. I hope Ghanaians will forgive him. But that is why he should have seen reason not to go after the Supreme Court, the Chief Justice.
There are a lot of things going on in Ghana this and past week. I mean, a lot of stuff. I mean, well, the good thing is that the dollar is,
but not because Ghana not because the government has instituted any measures. The dollar is weakening against almost every currency because of the tariffs
in the world. Well, we have more to talk about. We have Sami Jenfi and Agrada also bringing beef in the system. But anyway, I mean, we are not here to talk about. We can do that off scripts or something, or off radio. But tonight we are going to go. Let's remind our viewers where we are, our main purpose. Stay tuned.
Chimafidi nunkotu era one radio. Samupe jumpe dietia. Chimafidi nunkotu era one radio. Oh, anyumpankuma. Chimtu asampankuma. Chimtu agratumkuma. Era one.
Well, in case you join us, this is the Divine Connection Show. I'm your host, and I'm in the studio with Reverend Roberta Okron. You know, when we come to One Divine Connection, we don't just talk about the spirit. We also talk about the mind, wisdom, using our mind. That is why we do a warm-up, and then we catch up with current events. And I'm glad Pastor Okron is here, a man who wears many hats, so he's been able to brief us what is going on in Ghana. As a lawyer, I mean, himself, he understands the law and he knows what is going on. So every now and then he brings us tidbits of what is going on in the country. Anyway, we are here to discuss about the arguments that were posed by the king of Egypt, Pharaoh, and the way he tried to con the Israelites, I mean, the midwives, and how the midwives also played him. So I'm going to read our text. I want you to catch up with where we are so that you understand where we're coming from. I don't want to just, be wondering what is going on. But so I'm going to read Exodus chapter 1 from 15 to 22 to give you an insight of what these arguments are, and then Pastor Kwan will take it from there. All right, so let me read Exodus chapter 1, the King James Version from 15 to 2. It says, "And the king of Egypt spake to the Hebrew midwife, Shipra, and the name of the other was Puah. And he said, when you do the office of a midwife woman and see them upon the stools, if it be a son, then you shall kill him. But if it be a daughter, then she shall live. But the midwives feared God and did not as the king of Egypt commanded them, but saved the men, children alive. And the king of Egypt called the midwives and said unto them, why have ye done this thing and have saved the men, children alive?" 19. And the midwife said unto Pharaoh, because the Hebrew women are not as the Egyptian women, for they are lively and are delivered ere the midwives come in unto them. Therefore God dealt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied and waxed very mightily against what the Egyptian Pharaoh wanted. 21. And it came to pass, because the midwives fear God, that he made them houses. And Pharaoh charged all his people, saying, every son that is born ye shall cast into the river, and every daughter ye shall save alive. That is the word of the Lord. Well, before we continue, I want to ask Pastor Kron how he came with ideas, propositions of 1,073,741,824 between verses 15 and 22. All right, over to you, Doc.
Thank you, Dr. Boison.
You're welcome.
First, let me re-emphasize what Dr. Boison said so beautifully. This platform is not only about spiritual development, it is also about mind sharpening, the ability to look at text critically and then be able to come up with ideas that are hidden in what is stated explicitly. So one of the things we would learn to do is how to get what we call the logical consequence or implicit statements that actually can be deduced from explicit statements. And as part of it, we also want to look at what we call the text structure. And here the text structure we are going to deal with is in verse 15 to 15, actually 15 and 16, and then 19. These are the critical 15 and 16, and verse 19, the arguments that are there, right? So, Dr. Boison, first, a recap of what this Pharaoh wanted, right? From verse 7, one can say from verse 1 all the way to 14, where in previous sessions, we established the point that the Pharaoh wanted to control two elements. First, he wanted to control the strength, which the Bible called the might, the strength of the Israelites. He didn't want their strength or their might to increase more than it already was. And if he had his way, he would actually reduce their strength. The second thing also is that he wanted to reduce their number because according to verse 9, when he spoke to his people, the Bible says he made a categorical, explicit statement. He said, the children of the people of Israel are more, one, and they are mightier than us. And so these were two issues he was concerned, right? And when we read verse 10, we realized that he had also some concerns because he said, when war breaks out, which means it was a matter of time, not a matter of if, right? It wasn't a conditional statement he was making. He was making an emphatic statement when he used the word when or the term when instead of if. He knew that war was coming. One day war would break out, even if nothing of that sort was in the horizon. But he knew that's the nature of societies and empires at the time. And he said, when war broke out, it's likely that the Israelites would join forces with the enemies of Egypt. And then not only would they join, they will fight the Egyptians, and then they will use that occasion as an excuse to escape from Egypt. So the major concern we drew out of that was that the king was concerned about the numbers. If he could keep their numbers still or reduce it, that would be ill. If he could reduce their strength or keep it from growing, that also would be ideal. So setting up the tax masters was a way to channel their strength into some other ventures, especially construction of treasure cities. And that was supposed to, one, contain their strength. Because the Bible said the tax masters were to afflict them with burdens. So the king thought by literally imposing huge burdens on the Israelites, in addition to the pain that is inflicted as part of it, that will reduce the strength of the Israelites, and secondly, it also reduce their strength in the bedroom. It will reduce their strength. You getting me? So it was a twin effort. So setting up the tax masters over the Israelites to afflict them with their burdens was a means to contain the multiplication of the Israelites as well as their strength, right? The Bible said it didn't work, because the Bible said the more they were afflicted, the more they multiplied and grew. So now the king here was desperate. His plan had failed, right? Including bringing the whole of Egypt to become, call it the equivalent of tax masters. It still didn't help. So what was the next thing? Now let's stop this growth in numbers and growth in strength at the foundation stage, right? Stop the birth of boys, because one boy could impregnate as many girls, and so that number will keep growing. You getting me? And if more girls were alive than boys, then the girls might actually be forced into marrying Egyptians. So now you have a cross of Egyptian and Israelite children, right? You getting me? So what was the sanction? Kill boys. And how did he go about it? Actually get the Israelites to do the dirty work for the Egyptian Pharaoh. And that is where now we are going to start, right? In verse 16, the king said the following. He said, when you do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew women and sit them upon the stools, if it be a son, then ye shall kill him. But if it be a daughter, then she shall live. Dr. Boison, verse 16 is a loaded argument. First, when you do the office of a midwife, is the same as saying if you do the office of a midwife. So that is a conditional statement, right? And then the second part, and you sit them upon the stools, that is another if conditional. So it goes like this. If you do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew woman, and if you sit them upon the stools, then the third condition, if it be a son, then ye shall kill him. But if it be a daughter, then she shall live. So you see 4 conditional statements. Each either can stand on its own or embedded in the other. So untangling this argument is no easy task, but we will do. Dr. Boison, this is what we call conditional argument. In a conditional argument, you have 2 parts. Every statement that comes after the if is what we call the antecedent, which will serve as our premise in regular argument. Then whatever statement comes after the then, we call it the consequent, which will be the equivalent of the conclusion in a regular argument. And you know, a regular argument will have premises and then conclusion, right? So if we take that understanding and apply it here, let's look at the antecedents. First, the king says, if you do the office of a midwife, or when you do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew woman, not just any service, to anybody, specific, to the Hebrew woman. So the first premise is that you have to do the office of a midwife. And Dr. Boison, as you said, I actually reduced all these statements in there from verse 15 all the way to 22 and reduced them to propositions, right? And I came up with a minimum of 30 propositions, minimum, which means more, right? And Dr. Boison, let me repeat it. If you take the 30 propositions and you want to knowledge engineer them, right?
AI.
Yes, when you want to knowledge engineer these propositions hidden in or that make up verses 15 to 22, you come up with 30 propositions. And we said a proposition is any statement that has value. And the value could be either true or false, yes or no, right? That means each proposition has two possible values. Either it is true or it is false. So the number of propositions you have will also determine the number of ideas that are hidden in such propositions. So here we have 30 propositions minimum that we identify. So this becomes 2 raised to the power 30. And 2 raised to the power 30 is 1,741,824 possibilities in these 8 verses. Dr. Boison. So the question is, what sort of tools do you have or can develop to really extract all the possibilities out of this test that will make you a champion? Amen.
Amen.
This is what knowledge is about. How to engineer knowledge. So, I'm not going to do knowledge engineering today. I've just given you something to work with, but I'm going to look at just the arguments that are hidden in verse 15 and 16 and verse 19. Hopefully, we'll finish today. I hope so. So,
No doubt.
in verse 16, the first conditional argument, it goes like this. When you do the office of midwife to the Hebrew woman, if a son is born, then kill him. The second argument, Dr. Boison, it also goes like this. If you do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew woman, if a daughter is born, then she shall live. You see how we are going about it? Because all those are implied in that statement. Now, the second argument in the conditional, it also goes like this. If you see, if you do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew woman, and you see them upon the stools.
Upon the stool. That was going to be my question.
If a son is born, then you shall kill him. The fourth argument from that. When you do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew woman, and see them upon the stools, if it be a daughter, then she shall live. Dr. Boison. So the question to ask is, what if
you don't see them sit on the stools?
No, the question is, what if you are not doing the office of a midwife?
Midwife.
But you see the Hebrew woman on the stool.
He just pass by and go away.
Isn't that interesting? How these women were going to use this argument to silence the king, right? So it is possible I am doing the office of a midwife and I don't see the
woman sitting on the stool.
The woman, the Hebrew woman on the stool. However, I am able to know that a son is born. Does duty arise? No. So I can't kill.
So the king actually implicated himself.
Yeah,
but there were
he
some
wasn't too wise. Or he wasn't very
enough.
skilled in this sort of mental sophistication.
Analysis. I mean, he was desperate, so whatever would go for him, he was going to. I mean,
but Dr. Boison, that's what we have to learn, right? That means we have to learn to be able, if we are acting as kings, to be sure that whatever we say does not contain loopholes that could be used against us.
So what if the Pharaoh said, any child you deliver?
Yeah.
What could be the loopholes? Any child deliver, whether it's if it's a boy, you kill. If it's a girl,
yeah. Because Dr. Boison, the little secret there is the word end. We call it conjunction. In a conjunction, both sides of the end term have to be true for that sentence to be true. So if, for example,
legal terms
no,
properly.
it's not. It so happens that lawyers use it. The legal system use it.
They use it. That is why when I came to this country, I realized Bill Clinton was very smart. You know, when the saga that happened between him and
Monica
Lewinsky, they posted, and he being a lawyer, he said, "I did not sleep with that woman." And as a lawyer, I mean, he chose his words very carefully.
Yes, you have to give him his due, because the law has to be very clear. So a lawyer can win the day because of a loophole. That's the whole point. We have to understand, because Dr. Boison, I made a statement. There are two parties involved here, midwife and a king. So when do you play the role of a king and when do you play the role of a midwife? If you happen to be playing the role of a midwife and you come up against the power of a king, or in this case, call it a conundrum, a very difficult situation, learn how to go about crafting a very valid argument to wiggle yourself out of that jam. So this is we'll think this is just a test. I mean, we've been given, but the fact that the author took the trouble to include all these statements, complicated as they are, actually lends credence to the claim we make that the Bible is not only about the spirit, but it is also about the mind. Because this will force you into becoming a critical reader and a critical thinker. Are we getting the point clear? And so we are learning some things about the Bible. The Bible trains the mind. It brings sophistication to the mind. And it is the sophisticated mind that is able to see possibilities and bring light out of darkness. So Africa, we who are the face of Christianity, we owe it to ourselves and to the world.
I don't think we are the face. They brought it to us, and we have now championed it.
But we are now the face of it. Even if they brought it, we actually, Africa has more Christians than any continent. Right? The church, Christianity is growing in Africa way more than any other continent. Way more. But if the gospel brought enlightenment to other continents when they received it, why hasn't the Bible wrought such wonders in our domain, in our continent? And that's the argument you and I are making, that maybe they didn't teach us this and they didn't owe us a duty to teach us that. Because if they had an agenda that they must siphon our resources from our continent, then they also had it as a duty to make sure that this sort of knowledge will be their preserve. Period. So we are now trying to use our minds, to grow our minds, to make our minds sophisticated, to see possibilities in ordinary statements. What are the implications of explicit statements? What are the logical consequences, or what we call the logical entailments of explicitly expressed statements? And that's one of the things we are doing now. When the Pharaoh came to these midwives, Dr. Boison, you see power against helplessness. The midwife didn't have power. Why? All the Israelites were slaves. And you are the king of the oppressors, the Pharaoh. Now I'm talking to the women who, if you knew the Israelite society and the structure of it, you realize that the men were on top, the women were secondary. So the king, the most powerful man in Egypt, was now soliciting the help of the least powerful group to kill their own group, their own interest. So these women had to be fast thinkers. And that is what happened in the text. How come the most powerful man instructed the least powerful to do something to kill? But the Bible said the least powerful rather outsmarted the most powerful, and instead of killing, became saviors. Instead of them becoming killers, they became saviors.
Yeah, I think this is the situation where I posted a case where the power of the Pharaoh meets the wisdom of the midwives.
Yes.
I mean, these women were able to outwit this Pharaoh by wisdom. And I think this issue, as you've been saying every day, it's not a matter of what happened in the past. It's still happening. And even around the world, some places in the world, same thing. People are dancing to the powers of the ruling government or whatever, and they can't speak, they can't use their wisdom. And one person usurps his or her authority, and people are, quiet, they can't say anything. When we have wisdom to speak up or outwit or do something, this is something that happened. And these are women power. These women were able to. They didn't fight the Pharaoh. They didn't draw out any sort of bit. They used pure wisdom to make the Pharaoh look stupid. And unfortunately, we can't do that.
Who said we can't do that?
Well,
we are not doing it simply because we haven't developed the mental sophistication. It's not a question of we can't do that. We can't do that simply because we don't have the tools, we don't have the means. We have not developed.
Countries have parliaments and all sorts of legislative bodies, and they allow one king or one president to take
Dr.
everything. I mean,
Dr. Boison, the fact that we are reading this like a common text does not mean that the wisdom embedded here is something common. It is very uncommon. Are you getting my point? It is very uncommon. And so, if we want to do like these Hebrew women, we have to appreciate the text as is, the circumstances, and how they were able to come up with the sort of mental chops that would floor the king. And literally.
I mean, our brother Charles O'Dampton put in that some are doing it. I don't know. I mean, I know places like Burkina Faso, this leader has risen to the position where he doesn't compromise. He's actually stepping up. He doesn't care what the other nations are doing to undermine their efforts. But at least, yeah, like Charles rightly says, some people are doing it. But
yeah,
it's
but
time
not
that,
everybody. How many people are doing it compared to how many are not doing it?
That is a problem. That is I mean, the sycophancy and the yes thing is just too much. I mean, it's too much.
That is the task, right? So, Dr. Boison, if we appreciate the argument in verse 16, the complexity, the complication, the king presented, right? But what he didn't understand, or he failed to do if he understood, right, was that by choosing certain terms, right, he actually turned this whole injunction into an argument form, right, into giving the woman a loophole, a leeway to literally frustrate his efforts. So, how many arguments again can we see in verse 16, Dr. Boison? This again over, I can see 10. I see over 10 arguments, but we'll leave it at that, right? Now, let's jump to verse 19, right? Because verse 18 makes us to understand. Now the king called the Hebrew women, the Hebrew midwives, and asked them, why have you saved the Israelite boys? And then verse 19, the midwives said unto the Pharaoh, because the Hebrew women are not as the Egyptian women, for they are lively and are delivered before the midwives come in unto them. Oh, very interesting. Let's look at the argument they also presented. Dr. Boison,
Yes, sir.
Go back to 16. The king said, when you do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew women, and you see them upon the stools, that term actually simply means you attend unto them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If
the woman cannot complete the birth process by themselves, so somebody has to assist them.
Yes. So if you have a hand in the delivery of the child, then the next thing is look at the gender of that. The next thing, if it is a boy, duty arises for you to kill. If it is a girl, duty arises for you to let her live. You see the way we've gone about it. First,
Yeah, gender bias didn't begin from now.
you have to see, you have to be doing the office of a midwife.
So you have to
that
be,
is
you
the
have to be
first premise.
certified. You have to be
Yeah.
a certified midwife.
So the first proposition is this: you have to do the office of a midwife. Second proposition: you have to sit them upon the stools, and the king actually introduced the word, the conjunction "and,"
So
and
combine.
that is where the complication comes in. So let's see the problem in the kings, how the king simply
Presented his case.
undermined himself, right? So first proposition, you have to do the role of a midwife, true or false, right?
That's true, yeah.
Two, you also have to see the Hebrew woman on the stools, which could be true or false, right?
So is that stools in modern days the delivery bed, or what did they mean?
Yeah, whatever, right? It means you not only do the office of a midwife, you also have a hand in the delivery or the birth of the child.
Well, you have the right to commit murder.
Then the third thing, you determine the gender of the child. And then the fourth thing, kill if the gender of the child is that of a son.
And isn't that against the hypocritical oath that you are to save life and not kill?
I don't think even the Hippocratic oath has even come into being at this time. Because don't forget, the Hippocratic oath came in getting to the just around, I think,
The 19th century.
No. It came into being around the waning years of the first BC. I think it to be 140, 148 or 94 or something BC. And this we are talking about somewhere, this test, we are talking about somewhere 1500 BC. Are you getting me? So the Hippocratic oath hadn't come in at all. But even if it was there, right, the king was asking them to do something illegal.
And those days we didn't have Moses, because that was even before Moses was born to even have brought the 10 Commandments or all those laws.
Yeah. You getting me? So we are dealing with a very important text. Brain sharpener. Mind sharpener. That's what we are dealing with. So the woman had to follow. So as I said, those of you listening to us, you have to build the premises in verse 19 carefully. And then you'll be able to understand where the women were coming from. So the first requirement from verse 16 was that you have to see, you have to do the role of a midwife. 1. 2, you have to see the woman on the stool. That means you have a hand in the birth of the child. 3, you determine the gender of the child. 4, if the gender of the child is that of a son, duty arises. 5, you kill. If the gender of the child is a daughter, the duty is to let him live. There are 6 steps in there.
So the loophole used by the midwives is that you're telling us if we perform our role as a licensed midwife, if you see this woman sit on the stool, and they deliver, and we determine their sex or gender, and being a boy, we can do that. So if we get into the room and this one have already delivered before we get there, then we don't have that role. We don't have to perform that role.
Because that's where the lawyer will come in and say, right, there is an injunction, but there is no duty.
Then you lawyers can actually get away with any problem in this world.
No. It's not a question of getting away. You look at the text.
Because every situation or every
you look
case,
at the text because
you get something.
Don't forget, I said a little word there. Let's go back to verse 16. That little word. He said, when you do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew woman, and that little word is the problem. The king didn't realize that is a conjunction. And Dr. Boison, when we are building knowledge, we have what we call the logical connectors. There are 5 of them. There is and, there is or, there is not, there is if then, and then if and only if. These are the 5 logical connectors. With that, you can build any knowledge based on how many premises you have or propositions you have, right? So this king, as we said, you break these things, you turn them into your propositions. So the first thing, you have to do the office of a midwife, true or false, right? You have to see the woman on the stools, true or false, right? You have to determine the gender of the child, true or false.
What if you have a child who has no sex organs?
Oh, well, duty doesn't arise. The only time killing will take place is you are doing the office of a midwife. You see the Hebrew woman on the stool
getting ready to deliver.
Right? You determine the gender of the child to be a boy, then killing. Are you understanding? If any of this, because Dr. Boison, this is the learning, the takeaway from this.
But what if a lawyer, Pastor, what if a lawyer also comes in and says, okay, Pharaoh, you gave us a command, but you did not give us orders what means we should kill the boy? Strangle him, cut his head.
Yeah. Well, that's the lawyer at work. Should I smother the child? Should I stab the child? Right? These are. Should I kill the mother? If killing the mother will lead to the death of the child, is that, you see? These are, because if I kill the mother and the baby is not breastfed, it will die. You see that how this thing can be extended.
Well, outside that the baby can survive as long as the baby is not killed. In terms of breastfeeding, we have artificial milk.
But what we are saying,
they will get away.
Only say kill. Of course, you didn't specify the means, so we are just going by killing. Maybe strangle that child, right? Literally kill that.
Take the breath out of him.
Yeah, possibly. But the king used conjunction, the term end, right? So the duty arose only when that sentence, every part of that sentence was true. So let's look at the sentence that will necessitate or bring about the duty or trigger the duty to kill. 1, it says, to do the office of a midwife to a Hebrew woman, and you see the Hebrew woman upon the stool, and you determine that the child is a son, then you kill. Right? Then you kill. 4, So if you are doing the office of a midwife, but you don't see the Hebrew woman on the stool, duty does not arise. Everything else is false. The whole statement becomes false. Are we getting the picture clear?
Yep.
Because in a compound proposition, every atomic proposition must be true for the compound proposition to be also true. Let me give an example. Dr. Boison, if I say Kofi is 10, Amma is 11, right? I have two propositions. I can combine the two propositions into one proposition. Kofi is 10 and Amma is 11.
Okay.
That's one
Sentence.
That's one sentence. So just by saying Kofi is 10, Amma is 11, we have two propositions. And by combining them with the word end, Kofi 10 and Amma is 11, we now have three propositions.
You can even add a but preposition, it will still be a sentence.
Yeah, it still will be, right? So here we are. He used. So anytime you have two propositions and you use a conjunction to create a third proposition, you have three propositions, not two. However, the third proposition is a composite proposition made up of two atomic propositions combined by a term called end, conjunction. The same. So this king actually brought out or spelled out a composite position made up of four atomic propositions, all combined, right? Now, here is what we have to understand. You remember I said in any conditional argument, when you use when or if, right, you have the statement that comes after the if. We call it the antecedent. And then the statement or statements that come after the then.
Consequent.
We call it
conclusion coincident.
Right? So the king said, once you see, once you attend, you do the office of a midwife. 2, you see the Hebrew women on their stools. 3, you determine the gender of the child to be a boy, then you shall kill. 3 premises, 1 condition. Are you getting me?
Yes.
Now, the argument of the woman in verse 19. And the midwife said unto Pharaoh, because the Hebrew women are not as the Egyptian women, for they are likely, we don't care too much about what they are also actually giving us premises, right? Then we'll look at it. But when they say, and they are delivered before the midwives come into them, right? Which is where you see them upon their stools. So they told the king, listen, we do the office of a midwife, but the Hebrew women give birth before our services are needed. So we don't have a hand in the delivery of the baby or the babies. In fact, we don't have a hand in the delivery of the babies at all. So 1, the duty of determining the gender of the child does not arise, let alone the duty of killing. Are you getting the picture clear? Oh, No.
And the king was not smart enough to revise his SOP. That
You
okay,
couldn't.
you guys
You've
have outsmarted me. Let me change the modus operandum. Now
probably they would have outsmarted him again.
again.
Let him escape with his injuries. You getting me? Yeah. So the argument of the woman was to latch onto a loophole.
In the king's statement.
So when you come to a regular court today, you look at the statute or law. You look at the statute if the law was passed by a legislative body. If it was passed by Congress, we call it a bill or a law or a statute, right? If it is passed by a city or a council, we call them ordinances, right? But all of them actually we call them statutes, right? So the statute in this is duty arises when you play the role of a midwife to you help in the delivery of the child. 3, you determine the gender of the child to be a son. Then duty arises.
Finish him.
That's it. And the midwife said, Dr. King, yes, we play the role of midwives.
Because that's our profession.
However, we are not involved in the delivery of the children.
The women deliver by themselves.
So we are not obligated to even determine the gender of the child, let alone kill. You getting me? So this is where we are not, because we are not involved in the delivery of the child. Therefore, a duty to determine the role, the gender of the child does not arise. And if the duty to determine the gender of the child does not arise, then the duty to kill does not arise at all.
Yeah. Wow.
This is interpreting law. So you can say that when the king called them, the environment will constitute a tribunal with the king as the prosecutor and the midwives as the defense attorneys. The babies, especially the son,
are the plaintiffs support?
are the accused. Are you not getting the picture clear? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so duty did not arise. And the king, being a king, a lawmaker, and the executive, right? Don't forget the title, the king, the Bible said he commanded, right? He commanded. Command is the law from a king. Statute is the law from a legislative body. Are you getting the point clear? Law is a law from a judiciary body. A judicial body. So there are two people who make laws in any criminal setting or even tort setting. You have what we call judge-made laws. The technical term in America, and for that matter, the rest of the British legal system, anybody that follows the British legal system, we have what we call the common law. The common law is law that is made by a judge. Are you understanding? But it is only applicable within the judicial setting of that court. But if it is passed by a legislative body, that's a law that is binding. And so we have between the law passed by a judiciary, a judicial body, or sorry, a legislative body, and the law passed by a judge, right? We have what we call hierarchy. Who wins? In actual fact, in American jurisprudence, the statute will override common law.
Wow.
Very interesting, right? So this king was acting as both a lawmaker, a law executor, as well as a prosecutor. Because in a legal setting, you have the judge, you have the prosecutor, and then you have the defense attorney. So you have the bench, you have the bar.
But this guy was some sort of a monarch, so he wielded all the
That's why
power.
I said, as a monarch, he was a lawmaker, he was a law executor, and he was also law prosecutor. 3 roles in one monarch. So on this occasion, this was a tribunal. So you have the prosecutor, the lawmaker, and the law executor in one person. And then you have the defense attorney. So you actually could establish that environment as that of the presence of a bench and a bar.
Wow. Well, we are 10 minutes over the time because Pastor Crum wears many hats, as I said. And tonight he's giving us the legal aspect. I mean, isn't it cute and interesting that we have a pastor who has the spirit of the letter and the law and has also studied the legal system in this country and come back. I mean, it makes it so easy to understand the role that Pharaoh played. I mean, Pharaoh was trying to wear all these many hats. And if you live in a country where the Pharaoh has all this powers, what you do, the only thing you can do is to pray for the wisdom of God to be able to outsmart him. Otherwise, you won't win. If you have the monarch, the king making the law and making sure it's followed to the letter, how do you go about it? That is why the Bible says in Proverbs that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. If Shipra and Pua didn't have the wisdom of God, there was no way they could outwit the king. Just like it happened in the days of Solomon, when 2 harlots had babies each, and one slept on the other's her child, and it came before Solomon. In our contemporary times, we don't know how we're going to solve the problem to find out who actually owned the live baby. But by the wisdom of God, Solomon was able to say, you know what, get me a machete. I will cut this baby into 2 and give you and split it amongst you. But the real owner, the pathetic mother, the one who actually bore this baby and suffered and knew how it means to be pregnant and say, you know what, king, I can't see my baby die. Just give it to this woman. And Solomon knew who the baby belonged to. That was wisdom at play. That is the kind of wisdom that Shipra and Pua were able to use to outsmart this king who thought he had all the powers in the world. Thank you very much, Pastor Crum. I mean, you have made law so interesting and exciting. I mean, we came for one, we bought only one, and you gave us one for free. Buy one, get one free. But I think this is even more than buy one, get one free. We've gotten the spirit, we've gotten the legality, and we've gotten the word. Thank you very much, listeners and viewers. You can't get this broadcast anywhere. We are not bragging. We don't make too much noise. Not many people hear about us, but what we receive on this platform, we are making you think. I mean, you can make analysis from here. I've learned so much that if I have a case, even if I don't go for Pastor Crum as an attorney or lawyer, I can wiggle my way through, because look at the way he was able to weave this for us. The king thought he was Ogbonna, that he was a master, but even his own proclamation, he left some loopholes that these ladies, who I believe hadn't even stepped in the classroom before, were able to use to outwit the king. Thank you very much. Please go back to Era 1. Go look for the Divine Connection show. Pull the video. You see us there. The clip is going to be there. Please listen and share this broadcast and come back next week and listen to more. I thought we were going to close the chapter on this, but I mean, it's so interesting. I don't want to end it. Maybe next week we have to continue and get it from the woman's view again, because this is so exciting. I mean, I am so thrilled with the wisdom that this woman, used to outsmart the king. And it's not what happened in the past years ago. It's still happening in our system, and we have to be smart. If you come into contact with the king, monarch who's a bully, you only have to get the wisdom of God to be able to survive. Otherwise, things are going to go under you. And like they say, it will take you like rapture. Pastor Akron, I don't know whether you have any closing remark. We are 40 minutes beyond our time.
I think I've spoken
enough.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
To God be the glory.
This is exciting. I think I want to repeat. Next, we have to come back and look at the woman's perspective again, because this is wisdom, please. We all can learn so much from that. This thing makes you very analytical. It opens your mind. Like when we're in sixth woman, we took a subject called general paper, the fallacies of conclusion, after the class, we all go out and we are mingling with our friends, and somebody makes a statement, and just because he came from the class to tell your friend, I put it to you, what you said is a fallacy of hasty conclusion. You have to practice what you learn. And from tonight, please, let's all be analytical. If you hear something being blasted in the news or anywhere, analyze it and think about it. It's so exciting. We hear that somebody was going to be giving an aircraft 400 million plus. You ask yourself, who is going to pay for all that? Anyway, on that note, I'll bring my curtains to an end. Thank you very much. Our buddy Charles Odampton, he was also here to help us with our discussion. Of course, the elephant in the room. Pastor Kron, thank you for your wisdom. I never ever take your wisdom for granted. This is exciting. Even if nobody is listening, I am always learning, and I appreciate you for the wisdom that God has given you. We applaud you for your wisdom and for all the education. The tuition that you pay has not been in vain. We are all beneficiaries. Thank you very much. If the Lord tarries, hopefully he will. We'll meet again next week. Have a good evening and enjoy the rest of the night. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Chimafidi num kotu era one radio. Samupe jumpe bietia. Chimafidi num kotu era one radio. Oh.